Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just hesitating here as I look and see everyone's coming in, just checking the record is open. We were just talking about making sure it's recording. So, welcome, everyone. You're joining the Making Hidden Voices Heard Inclusive Behaviour Change in Action, or in practice, as it were. We're going to be spending the morning together looking at inclusivity to reducing health inequalities. Some brilliant actual work that's going on. So we'll just give everyone a second to get started. And I'm going to, yes, I'm just going to check. Sorry, have a look. Now is your last chance to grab a cup of tea if you want one. And I'll do the official welcome to everyone at past, so I'm not saying everything twice. But my name is Ruth Dale, and you are here for the Inclusivity event. Okay. So thank you everyone for coming. I can see it's churning. Do say hello in the chat. It is set so people can come in and out. We know you're at work today, so we know it's busy. So yeah, I'm just monitoring that as it comes in. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We did toy with the idea of having a fun countdown, to get the suspense going. And then I don't know, I was like, oh my gosh, no, more tech. Do we need more tech here? Hi, Shannon. Thank you for saying hello and kickstarting that. Please do. Oh, and Victoria. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Sarah. Please do say hello to everyone. And I'm just going to bring up the delegate pack. Okay, so it's just coming up to past. Welcome, 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 everyone. Oh, morning from Edinburgh. Hello, Ben. Sunny Edinburgh, even. Oh, gorgeous. Hi, Nicola. You've got your coffee. Yes, I know, Nicola. With a webinar, it's so hard to gauge energies and to capture energies. So please, we love a few emojis. We love a bit of chat in the chat. So please do chat away and say hello to each other. Pop your LinkedIn's in or any contact details if you want to connect. It's a really fun, fast morning. So we will get started on time, which is, according to me, which is now. So we'll just I can see people coming in, just give them a couple of minutes, or up to 50. We had over 270 actually sign up, so which is amazing. We're so grateful because we know how busy you are, and a morning is a lot to give out. So we know that you're going to come in and out as you can. That's absolutely fine. Everything will be recorded. We will be popping an evaluation form in the chat at the end of every session. And so you can enter that as many times as you like. And then one lucky person will be drawn the book giveaway, which we'll come on to in a second. Yeah, AI notes coming in. That's a very good idea. If anyone wants to share AI notes as well, be very interested in how they turn out. Right, I'm just going to bring up the delegate pack. Okay, are we still? Yeah, we're at 68, still churning. So I'll still let people come in before we do the official welcome. Okay. Now, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the delegate pack on your screen? Yay, great. Wonderful. I'm going to openly admit I am a Zoom girl and this is Teams. And so it's so different. It's very interesting. Okay, as they're coming in, good morning, Sarah from Barnsley. Oh, brilliant. We've got Barnsley today. Yes, it's being recorded. Josephine, honestly, please don't worry. We're deliberately recording it. We will be putting it straight away on YouTube in full, and then we will break it up into chunks as well for people. So, yeah, all recorded. We know people have to come in and out. All the speakers know, so it's absolutely fine. So I'll get started because it's past. So my name is Ruth Dale. I founded Hidden Voices Heard after 20 years of NHS public health system, local government, internal, working basically 20 years to reduce health inequalities. And at Hidden Voices Heard, we specialise in behavioural insights, which is essentially using the behavioural science stuff to capture the voice of the people the services and are designed for to reduce health inequalities and to make services more inclusive. So it's what we do all day, every day. And we have loads of conversations about inclusivity all the time, which is why we decided to focus on it for this session, because inclusivity is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. You might see it in strategies, policies, but what does it actually mean? It probably means something very different for everybody. So today is not about this is right or wrong. Today is very open. It's about pausing, reflecting, and everyone is going to be looking at it differently depending on your role. So how it appears for you in your life at home, how it appears for you in your life at work will be different. So we'll be kicking off with Luan and Tom, who I'll introduce in a second. And there's a very good reason we're starting with them, but we're going to kick off with them, and then we're going to head into let me just show you the agenda here. Oh, I'll come back to the thing. We're going to kick into, then we're going to pause and look at inclusion a bit. Unfortunately, Advita can't be here today, but she has very kindly done a pre-record for us. The pre-record will be sent out at the end, just because we didn't want to break up the live feel of the session today. So I'm just going to step in there and just pause to reflect on inclusion with you, please. Really would love you to talk as well on that one. And then we're going to skip into Catherine Knight from Intelligent Health, where they do Beat the Street, which is inclusion at scale, essentially. And then Elizabeth Miranda, who will be doing Building Trust with Underserved Communities. So we're going scale, inclusion at scale, then inclusion deep. And then this is actually a favourite of mine, The Power of Better Questions by Katie Tucker. And I love Katie because she's not public sector. She works very closely with public sector, but she brings a fresh voice into the importance of asking the right question. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you go down the wrong road. And it's such an underrated skill, and it's absolutely powerful for inclusion. And then we're going to go into the undefeatables with BWD. All typos, I just spotted one by the way, are deliberate, okay? For my comms friends. I've got so many comms friends. You've seen things in like half a second. But then we'll be ending with Dr. Paul Chadwick. So he is the CEO of the Behavioural Science Network and Behavioural Science and Public Health Network, but it's broadening and it's got a bigger vision. And I think by the end of today, kind of you might think, oh my goodness, what next? How can I get more help on this? And the network is there to do that. And it's also when we will draw for the prize. So thank you so much. We have a book giveaway just as a thank you for showing up, but also to complete the evaluation form, please. So we've got a book from Katie, Do Penguins Eat Peaches? From Luan and Tom, their recently published marketing psychology book, which is incredible. Building an Inclusive Culture by Advita, and a Brain Fuel journal from us. So we run a Brain Fuel book club on the side, you know, so that you're not busy enough. And we've got a reading companion that we thought would chuck in with it. So please do complete the evaluation form. This will be drawn on the day. So when we're chatting with Paul at the end, don't evaluate Paul because he's, well, I suppose we could, but we'll be drawing then anyway. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share and hand over to our first speakers. So if I'd like to introduce to you Luan and Tom. Now, Luan has trained thousands of business professionals across the world. She has done online courses for LinkedIn, Meta, Google. She is Absolutely incredible trainer in social media. We are so lucky and privileged to have her with us today. And Tom is a lecturer, senior lecturer in marketing and behavioural science at Bristol Business School. And he's also, of course, the author of the marketing and psychology book. So together they're going to kickstart us. So I'm going to stop talking and hand over to those guys now. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Ruth, and thank you for everything you've done to organise today, getting everyone together and pulling together an amazing agenda. Tom and I are really delighted to kick this off for you. So we are going to talk about the psychology behind decisions. Before you even logged on 5-10 minutes ago, you've made lots of choices today, whether that's what to eat for breakfast, what you're wearing, whether you're going to dive into your emails or hold them and check them later. You will be making hundreds of more decisions and choices throughout your working day. Now, psychology, the study of how people think, feel and behave, it's there to help us understand how those decisions are made, how we make those choices. And as communicators in our job roles, we have the power to influence those choices, to guide behaviour changes. So in this session, Tom and I are going to share just a few theories that illustrate what might impact your audiences, your stakeholders, and how they make those decisions. And you'll have seen in the delegate pack the structure for today. Ruth has asked us to share and structure this around stop, start, and steal. So we have some theories around things to stop doing, some things to start doing, and for the steal, we've got some resources to help you dive deeper into the topic. So let's start with our stop. Tom, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, great to be with you all. Thank you very much for inviting us. I'm going to start with some fundamental principles that some of you may be familiar with about how people think and how they make decisions. So some of you will have heard of, and some of you may even have read, Daniel Kahneman's famous best-selling book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And it's a fantastic book. It's really a summary of his career. He's probably one of the most prominent psychologists of the 20th century, sadly no longer with us. And the key takeaway from all of the theories that he investigated, particularly with his colleague Amos Tversky, was that there are broadly some decisions that we make very quickly, and some decisions where we do stop and think far more carefully. And therefore, sometimes we think fast and sometimes we think more slowly. And he refers to those two different systems as system one, which is broadly based on emotion, where we make automatic, quick decisions, and system two, which is far more cognitive, where we stop and think and evaluate information far more carefully. And if you think about times in your life where perhaps you've done one or two, probably in the supermarket, you very often rely on system one. If you're guided by the offers on that particular day, buying a tin of beans or something on a supermarket shelf, you probably don't think too deeply about that decision. You get guided by sometimes what we call heuristic, rules of thumb that guide you into making a decision one way or the other. Whereas if you're buying a car or something that involves more money, you're probably more likely to focus on system two. Actually, the key to understanding what system one and what system two is actually not necessarily money. It's actually involvement very often, how cognitively involved are you in that decision. So even clothing, which might not be a massive expense depending on where you shop, clothing is probably more of a system two decision. So this is important, that sometimes we rely on emotion, sometimes we rely more on cognition to make a decision. And as I say, there are lots of theories that relate to this in Daniel Kahneman's book and many others as well. There's some great books out there for those of you that want to dive in a bit deeper. Now, if we think about a traditional marketing funnel, and I realize that a lot of you are not necessarily involved in commercial marketing of products or services, but a traditional marketing funnel or a sales funnel, sometimes it's called, often follows the AIDA model: awareness, interest, desire, action. And the thing to pay attention here is that cognitive involvement is often only the starting point. Very often, to drive awareness and for that to lead to sales, you have to go through an emotional level of involvement too. So people might become aware of a brand or a product or a service, but they then have to feel that they want it. They have to show an interest and a desire in that product or service to then eventually take action. And there are other models that say similar things. Some of you might be familiar with things like the COM-B model or the theory of planned behavior. There are other models that also say that basically facts alone, cognitive information is probably not often going to be sufficient to drive behavior. So you need to combine that with emotion. And as I said earlier, sometimes actually we don't even need the cognition bit at all. Sometimes we go straight to the effective engagement for very quick decisions, and that might lead to behavior. So just thinking about how this might relate to some context that might be relevant to you. And we focused a bit on health and fitness, which I realized might not be the number one thing that all of you focus on in your communication work, but it seemed like a topic which was relevant to mainly public sector organizations. And I should say actually that I have worked on a whole range of different projects myself. I used to work in public relations for many years. So I've worked with public sector organizations as well as commercial organizations, and B2C and B2B too. So I can see some of the things that I'm talking about in the work that I've done previously in my public relations work before entering academia, which was quite a while ago, 13 years ago or so. So as an example, there are lots of messages being sent out by all sorts of organizations in all sorts of formats too, talking about the benefits of exercise and a healthy diet. And there might be people on TV, there might be spokespeople from government organizations, maybe sports organizations, telling us all the time that actually a healthy diet and exercise are really good for us. However, at the same time, there is also information, particularly at the moment in the last few months, around the effectiveness apparently of weight loss drugs. And therefore, when we think about what might be at the forefront of someone's mind, if they're trying to lose weight, maybe they've got a particular goal in mind, maybe they want to fit into a particular outfit for a particular event, maybe a wedding or something, what might become mentally available in their head, first and foremost, might be the quickest, the easiest way to get to that outcome. I mentioned Daniel Kahneman earlier on. He did quite a lot of research in availability bias and mental availability with Amos Tversky, looking at all sorts. One of the examples they use is if you're about to get on a plane, for example, and what you've seen in the newspaper the day before has been an article about a plane crash, you're probably more likely to overestimate your chance of your plane being in a plane crash, even though the objective facts don't change, because it's mentally available, it's in your head. So yeah, as much as you may have seen all the correct messaging around what you should do to maintain a healthy lifestyle, actually you're also likely to have at the forefront of your mind other sources of information too. And then very often we actually are quite selective in what we choose to make a decision too. So again, as much as we might think we're making a rational decision based on cognition and based on facts and objective assessment of information, yeah, you might find some information, for example, on the internet. You're probably likely to look at information in particular and focus and filter even that information based on an emotion that you already had. This is called confirmation bias. When you're just searching for information, people do this all the time to support an existing view. So buying a car, for example, you might find all sorts of reasons why a particular model of car, particular brand of car is the right car for you, but actually you may just have an emotional attachment to that brand. Maybe you just want to be seen driving that particular brand. So example here of someone finding information online that 5 minutes of exercise is fine. There are all sorts of programs that might support that, but actually what's driven that search for that information is that they just don't want to do that particular exercise. They just hate running. So people often actually are relying on their emotional brain, if you like, the emotional bit of their brain, in order to source information that supports that cognitively. So the whole section really that we've just been looking at is about stopping a reliance on just facts alone, understanding that actually emotion does play a big role in decision making very often, not always, but very often, and that's an important consideration.
So our stop is to stop thinking that everyone is always rational in their decision making and their choices, which leads to our start to pick up on that and go into some more theories, those emotional drivers that will encourage people to commit to new behaviours.
So I think Ruth mentioned earlier on that we've written a book, and in that book there are lots and lots of theories, and this isn't really a plug for the book, it's just to say that there are hundreds of theories out there that probably support some of the ideas that we're presenting today, and we've just picked a few that we think might apply to your context. Some of the theories that we present in the book are about commercial marketing, pricing and things like that, which might not be entirely relevant to every context, but we've tried to pick a few here that we think might be particularly pertinent. So a concept that you may have come across before, and you may not even have known it's called social proof, but this idea that we basically look for examples of other people in order to understand what behavior we should adopt in that particular moment. So this typically happens in moments of uncertainty. If you're in a new country, perhaps, and you're not quite sure, what the correct etiquette is. Things like queuing, for example, I've noticed are very different in different countries. You tend to look around and work out what other people are doing and then copy that. And social marketing as well as commercial marketing can employ those tactics. So for example, you may have seen these too on the motorway gantry, signs telling me what the typical behaviors are of other motorists. And why not apply that to other contexts too, and show behaviors that relate to healthy eating or exercise or whatever area of communications you're in. Actually, what's interesting about social proof is it doesn't necessarily need to be necessarily about the majority. It can actually also be showing trends. So it can be also effective in actually showing that something is trending and growing and increasing. You look at technology adoption, for example, people often get influenced by seeing trends that they want to be part of, even if it's not yet adopted by the majority. So just showing that people that are similar to your audience are already adopting a behavior might be sufficient to demonstrate that social proof. Now, we can also talk about the language that you use through your messaging. This could be to describe a product or service, but it could also be to describe a behavior. And Ian Begg's research, quite a few years ago now, University of Toronto was looking at things like, I think he described the difference between reactions to the words mortal fate and square door, and basically found that it's easier to digest and remember tangible, concrete language than it is abstract language. So if you're trying to use words to try and explain to people what they should do to change their behavior, make it as concrete as possible. Rather than live your dream, tell them how they can actually take part in an activity in a tangible way, maybe in their location that's relevant to them. Make it as concrete as possible. This has also been applied to sales more recently by Jonah Berger, who was looking at the language that salespeople use, for example, and how that can drive sales in a commercial context. It's also important to tell a story, and the research demonstrates that actually stories make information more memorable. We tend to remember events in terms of stories, but also there's a theory called narrative transportation, which is people tend to empathize and understand a story by picturing themselves in that story and getting absorbed into that story. So as much as you might want to show examples of social proof and others that have adopted a particular behavior, tell a story about those people and show maybe a challenge that ended in a positive solution, ideally adopting the behavior that you're referring to. Some behaviors that you might be trying to promote might be maybe not completely unpleasant, but just maybe not people's top priority. So one way around this, and Katie Miltman's research has demonstrated this, is to bundle something that people don't necessarily want to do with something that they actually really do want to do. So I think her research was looking at audiobooks and how when you ask people to listen to an audiobook whilst in the gym, they're more likely to want to go to the gym because they enjoy listening to the audiobook, whereas perhaps they might not have otherwise chosen to go to the gym. Well, why don't do the same thing? Rather than focusing on the exercise itself, focus on what people are going to do while they're exercising, listening to music, for example, and build that into your messaging too. Control is important too. So people like to feel a sense of control. So they probably might not react well to being told to adopt a particular behavior, but if you give them a range of choices, not too many, because there's something called choice overload. Too many choices puts people off making any decision. But actually, if you give people some choice and let them take control, there's actually research that people like to feel in control, and actually in a commercial context are prepared to forego a bigger reward in order to stay in control. It's called the control premium. Maybe offer a default, say this is the typical training plan, for example, if it's exercise related, but actually there are others available. Make that person feel in control, and also drive what we call intrinsic behavior. Make the person want to do that behavior because they've chosen to do it rather than because someone else told them. And then linking to that, if we tap into theories that relate to memory, Dan Ariely, again, you may have read some of his books, did a great piece of research looking at how commitment makes a difference to sticking to that behavior. And partly that's a social influence. If you tell someone else that you're going to do something, you're probably more likely to want to do it because you feel that social pressure. But also it means that you've embedded that particular choice into your memory, and you can remember that you said you were going to do that particular thing. Dan Ariely looked at deadlines and how people are more likely to stick to a deadline. You could apply that to commitment to take on a particular behavior related to health. For example, I'm going to run a 5k. You tell Pete you're going to run the 5k, and now you feel like I better do it because I've said I'm going to do it now, and it's in my memory, and Pete's going to put pressure on me too. And then lastly, one more theory related to memory is actually asking people to be involved in generating some content for themselves. So if you can encourage people to research it, brilliant. So if you can encourage like learning in a university, in my context, we know that students learn better when they go away and they research something themselves. That's called elaborative interrogation. But you could also, when it comes to health related behaviors, you could ask people to be involved in setting a training plan rather than just following a training plan, and that generation of content themselves is more likely to lead to their buy-in. You could then remind them how they've got on later down the line, and show them the endowed progress that they've done so far. You've done so much so far, don't let that go to waste. Continue. And also this research around identity as well, calling someone a runner, saying you are now a runner, that changes identity and changes the way they feel, rather than just someone who does running. So several theories in there. I think that was 7 from memory. It might have been 8, but yeah, a few theories that you can perhaps use in your work. Some of you may be doing some of these things already. I'm sure you are, in fact. But a few theories that relate to hopefully topics that you might communicate around.
So, as you can gather, there are many psychology theories that can impact decision making, and we've covered just a few today. So our steal, next slide, Tom. Our steal for you is thinking about bringing those theories into practice. And that is very much what Tom and why we collaborated together on writing this book, Marketing and Psychology. Tom writing the theories from his many years of research, myself as a marketing practitioner, thinking and considering how do we use those in practice? How might we apply them? What key questions do we want to ask? So we're not suggesting that you take our entire book, because actually there's over 400 theories in the book. Don't try and apply them all. It's a reference guide, a resource that you can refer to when you're updating your strategies, preparing a new campaign, ideas that you can try and see what impact they can make. We're looking for small incremental differences just to nudge people further towards the behaviours that we're looking for them to action and change. So our steal is this summary of the book. Ruth has shared this in the delegate pack. We grouped the theories in a way to make them understandable. We called it A, B, and C. Tom, if you just go back, I'll talk through the ABC. We grouped them into A, B, and C so that it reflects the funnel. We've talked about theories that help you understand your audience, your stakeholders, in terms of brand, how your brand is communicated. So that's about your messaging. And then the elements that help people make those choices, whether it's about memory, biases, and value. So our steal is a structure of theories, how you can use those, implement them, and our resources. We have the book. We also have a website. You've got the next page, Tom, is the link that we've shared with you. There's click-throughs to all the podcast appearances we've done, including Nudge and Influence Anyone and Ruth's Brain Fuel as well, where we keep diving into these topics with lots of examples. So hopefully that's made it accessible to you. A few ideas for you already. We will share the slides, and now we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Luan. I will just say briefly as well that although we use the word brand, a good friend of mine, Dr. Zach Thompson at University of Tennessee, actually has written, did a whole PhD, but also written a paper, I don't think it's been published yet, about how brands do relate to social marketing context too, and how, as much as we might talk about products and services being branded in the commercial world, actually in a social marketing context, yes, the organization, NHS, can be branded, but also the campaign can be branded, and also the behaviors that you're trying to encourage themselves carry brand meaning too. So although we use the word branding and we talk about commercial products and services, actually it does apply to other contexts too.
Ruth, do you want me to pick up on the question that's in the Q&A?
I just
dive into that.
Can we just first of all, I want to say thank you, because honestly, there's so much in there. Thank you both so much. And I just wanted to reinforce what Tom said. When they're talking brands, here's your wonderful book. It's actually service design in our world, okay? This is 100% relevant for all commissioning and service redesign, because in marketing, in commercial sector, marketing is the product. It's not the comms. This is not promotion. This is service redesign. So really, everyone, it is still so relevant for you. So yes, and thank you. Yes, and I just saw that. Hello, Helen. I know Helen. That's a toughie. That one's over to you, Luan. Do you want me to read it out for you?
No, it's fine. I'll go for it.
Okay,
it is a toughie one to start the morning, but actually, Helen, you may not be aware, this is also one of my specialist topic areas and an area of research. I have also been writing a book around privacy in the age of social media. So I'm absolutely on top of the news that broke late last night and is being talked about this morning, how Meta and YouTube have been found guilty in a social media addiction case. The features of the platforms that have come into play in this are features such as infinite scroll, where we're really encouraged to just keep scrolling, autoplay of videos, and those kind of implications for mental health and kind of keeping people on the platforms in ways that are perceived as unethical. Tom, I'm going to throw it back to you in a second, because as Tom and I were writing the book, and the great thing about writing together is that we did challenge each other a lot. And we challenged each other in terms of how we presented the theories, because as much as we talk about bias, we were aware that we might have our own bias come into play with the theories we presented and how we talked about them. And obviously there are also many theories, for example, dark triad, which aren't necessarily positive ways of using them in marketing campaigns as well. So we did consider ethics. There is a note on ethics. It is pertinent to that litigation, and some features that can be seen to use the word manipulate people in maybe kind of the darker areas of theory versus maybe some more positive ways of using what we know about how people make decisions. Tom, do you want to pick up on dark triad in a bit more detail for us?
Well, just generally on ethics. I mean, I have to say I haven't done any research on social media addiction particularly. So, and the only thing I do know about it, and from conversations I've had with other academics, is that it's a very controversial area. And clearly, there's been a finding in America that's kind of found, I presume, that there is evidence for this, but I know that in academia it's quite controversial to understand what is social media addiction, how does it compare to chemical addictions, for example, and are they actually the same thing or not. So I know that there's a lot of debate. I'm not saying either way it does exist or doesn't exist or whatever, but I just know it's a controversial area. I mean, a general point I often get asked about ethics is it okay to use psychology in marketing? Is it ethical to use psychology in marketing? And my general fallback is that it depends what the product or service is that you're applying it to, and does it offer genuine benefit? Are you comfortable as a marketer that what you're doing is going to have genuine benefit? Now, I imagine that most of the audience today would say that what they're doing does have genuine benefit because it's for social good in the long run. It's has health implications, etc. But yeah, when people say, "Oh, should I use these techniques to sell alcohol, for example? Should I use these techniques to sell something which is actually legal, but actually people might have ethical views on?" It comes down to the products or services really. But as Luan said, in the book we explain all the different psychology, and we're not necessarily saying you should apply all of that psychology to every single marketing campaign. It comes down to the context that you're applying it to really. I can see there's another question around public affairs as well, Alona. I think I've never worked in public affairs directly. I've worked for a big PR agency, Grayling, and they obviously do a lot of public affairs work. And my understanding is a lot of that is around communication with people. And there is a chapter in our book around all the things that go into how we judge other people, things like likability, similarity, and I think Ruth, you wrote a blog this week about unity and Robert Cialdini's principle, the seventh principle of influence from his latest edition, the updated version of influence. So yeah, there's lots of work around how we judge individual people, also how we communicate with people, because I realized that your communications work as a public affairs specialist might be actually just talking to other people, talking to politicians, talking to journalists, that kind of thing, and how you present yourself. Again, it all comes down to social psychology, really. So there's one chapter in our book around how we judge individual people, and there's another chapter around how we judge networks and groups and how we behave in those group situations too. So I think both of those would be particularly relevant.
Thank you, Tom. And Alona, I think Katie's session will really help you because the framing of the question is everything, isn't it? As to what you get back. So yeah. That's really amazing. Thank you both so much. And Luan, thank you for tackling that, the ethics one. We can go down, ethics takes forever, but I would say as well, if you're a member of SIM or CRPR or social marketing, there's loads of ethics frameworks to draw on around this. And just to add that one of the reasons we're so passionate about behavioral science is because it is assuming that psychology is happening all the time. So it might not be that you leverage everything. You don't need to know all of this book. It's much more about the understanding that it's happening. And actually, sometimes with inclusivity, it might be equipping people to understand. A lot of public health campaigns are about showing the manipulation behind marketing, especially in the tobacco industry. And then that's what people change their behavior on because they become aware of the manipulation tactics. So being aware of them is absolutely key, I think, in our modern world, especially even with what's just happening with the social media giants. Thank you.
I've just added a link into the chat because the social media safety online, should it be banned for teenagers? The UK consultation is currently open until the 26th of May. So people can read more about what that means. And it's not just about online safety, it is about the elements of psychology that the platforms use, like, as I said, the infinite scroll, the autoplay. So if people do want to know more about that and contribute, there is a full consultation, a survey for parents and carers, and also one for children as well to participate in. So I've put the Gov link in there. It's worth a look.
Okay. Oh, amazing. Oh, thank you both, Luan and Tom. You've been absolutely incredible. Really appreciate your time. I was just thinking now we should have some sort of cheer that we can press a button. So, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So welcome to anyone that's joined. And thank you all for still being here. We're at 110, so that's amazing. Do still pop your LinkedIn in the chat. Do interact, and we'll come to more questions. And Charlotte, I'll have a think about the social marketing book for you. I'm